can still recall the moment like it was yesterday. I was by the office coffee machine, adding a splash of oat milk to my morning cup, when Ryan, the newly appointed CEO and son of the company's founder, walked into the break room. He didn't say hello, didn't even acknowledge me. His eyes swept past me like I was just another piece of office furniture. Then, without any preamble, he barked, "Lily, my office. Now." It wasn't a request. I had dedicated over a decade to that company, almost 11 years. In that time, I had created the client services department from the ground up, handled more than 100 contracts, and mentored nearly every person now working just outside Ryan's door. But none of that seemed to matter to him. His father, Mr. Cole, had built the company with grit, heart, and loyalty. Ryan had inherited the title, and apparently believed that gave him the authority to play judge, jury, and executioner. I followed him into his office, a pit forming in my stomach. He didn't even bother sitting down. "You're fired," he said bluntly, his tone cold, indifferent. "We don't need dead weight dragging this company down." At first, I thought he was joking. "Excuse me?" I asked, stunned. "You heard me," he replied without even looking up, flipping through papers like he was skimming a lunch menu. "Grab your things. You're done. Effective immediately." Shock froze me in place. My heart thundered in my ears. A million things I wanted to say raced through my mind. Defenses, demands, rage. But instead, I smiled. Calm. Measured. "Understood," I said. "Have a nice day, Ryan." I walked out with my head held high, though I was shaking inside. As I passed my team, their faces turned toward me. Some started to rise, concerned. I gave a subtle shake of my head. "Don't." Silently, I packed up my desk. The drive home was a blur of memories. 11 years. 11. I had sacrificed birthdays, holidays, sleep, and sanity for that company. I'd taken calls through tears after my divorce, stayed late more times than I could count, always saying yes when it meant someone else could go home early. And just like that, I was discarded. But surprisingly, I wasn't angry, at least not at first. I was curious. Why? That question wouldn't let go. Ryan's words echoed in my mind all night. There was something off. The arrogance, the timing, the deal. We were on the verge of closing the biggest contract in the company's history, a deal I had spent half a year nurturing. I knew every detail. I had even scheduled the final meeting for that Friday. And now, I was out. Had he even looked at the agreement? The next morning, just past 9 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. "Lily, it's Mr. Cole." I froze. That voice, firm, familiar, and unmistakably serious, sent a chill down my spine. "I just walked into the office," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "Why the hell did you leave? What happened?" I hesitated. "Your son fired me." Silence. Then a sharp inhale. "He what?" "Yesterday. Said I was lazy, that I wasn't needed anymore." The silence stretched before he spoke again, slower this time, as if trying not to explode. "Lily, did he even read your contract?" My brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "He's supposed to finalize the Kingswell deal today, right?" "Yes. 11 o'clock meeting." Jesus Christ. I heard the shuffle of papers, then a loud slam, his hand on the desk, no doubt. "Lily, that contract has a clause. One I demanded after the last acquisition mess. You're not just managing the account. You're the only person authorized to negotiate and finalize the Kingswell deal." I went still. "Without you, that deal can't be signed. Not legally. Not at all." A wave of realization hit me like ice water. Ryan hadn't read the contract. He had fired me without understanding the damage he was causing. Mr. Cole didn't say another word. He hung up. I sat motionless on my couch, untouched coffee cooling beside me, staring at the wall. I could feel his fury. Ryan had fired me over ego and impulse, oblivious to the fact that he'd just sabotaged the biggest deal of his CEO debut. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. 11 years of blood, sweat, and sacrifice, all undone by a spoiled, reckless man playing executive. And now, he would learn just how real the consequences were. Part of me wanted to walk back in, sit in the conference room, and watch it all fall apart. But the other part, the one that had spent years being overlooked, dismissed, and undervalued, wanted to sit back and let the empire burn. I didn't have to wait long. At exactly 10:13 a.m., my phone rang again. This time, it was Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. Not even a minute later, another call came through. Reception, then legal, then accounting. My phone was lighting up like Times Square, vibrating nonstop with back-to-back calls. I didn't answer any of them. Just sat there, staring, until the blinking voicemail icon finally wore me down. I tapped play. Lily. Hey, it's Ryan. His voice was tight, strained. Look, there was some confusion yesterday. I may have acted a bit hastily. We really need you back in the office. It's urgent. Please call me. Urgent. That word clanged around in my mind like a loose bolt. Still no apology. Not even a half-hearted corporate version. Just veiled panic dressed up in pleasantries. I took another sip of my now stale coffee, unmoved. At 10:32, my phone buzzed again. This time with a name I hadn't seen pop up in years. Nicole. We'd once been close when she worked in my department, before transferring to marketing. I answered. You won't believe what's happening, she whispered, urgency dripping from every word. Ryan just got shredded. By his dad, in front of everyone. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? He brought the Kingswell contract into the meeting room, slammed it on the table, and asked Ryan if he'd even read it before firing you. I sat up straighter. He brought that contract? Oh, yeah. And when Ryan tried to spin some excuse about realigning roles, Mr. Cole flipped straight to the clause. You know, the clause. The one that names you as the sole negotiator for Kingswell. I remembered it well. I had pushed hard for that clause after a previous fiasco with a different client. Apparently, Ryan was the only one who hadn't done his homework. Nicole hesitated, then added, he looked pale, like ghost white. It finally hit him. He's the reason we're about to lose the biggest deal of the year. I exhaled slowly. And Mr. Cole. He said, if the deal falls through, Ryan's job is on the line. There it was. The first crack in Ryan's fragile authority. Nicole lowered her voice. I don't know what you're planning, but whatever it is, you hold all the cards now. I thanked her softly and ended the call. Then I stood up and walked to the window. The city skyline stretched out in calm indifference, always moving forward, no matter the mess below. At 11:15, another message arrived, this time from Mr. Cole himself. Lily, I'm truly sorry. I misjudged the situation. Please come in. Not just for the Kingswell deal, but so we can speak. Just the two of us. I stared at the screen for a moment. It was tempting. But walking back into that office like nothing had happened? Not a chance. Not without terms. This wasn't just about a mishandled firing. It was about being valued, about restoring trust, about dignity. I finally responded. I'm open to returning to finalize the Kingswell agreement, but only under specific conditions. I'd like to meet with you privately beforehand. I pressed send. Then I changed out of my pajamas and got ready. When I arrived at the office just past noon, I didn't slip in through the employee door. I entered through the main lobby, head high. Everyone knew I had been dismissed the day before. My return wasn't just unexpected, it was a statement. The receptionist stood the moment she spotted me. Ms. Harris, Lily, Mr. Cole is waiting for you. She led me through the hall, where whispers trailed behind us. Conversations paused. Eyes followed. The air itself seemed charged with tension. Mr. Cole stood by his office door when I arrived. Lily, he greeted with a nod. Thank you for coming. I nodded, but didn't offer my hand. He stepped aside, and I entered, settling into the seat across from his desk. A beat of silence passed.
I made a serious mistake, he began. I handed my son too much control too soon. I wanted to believe he could lead. I didn't expect him to tear down what others worked so hard to build. I listened quietly as he continued. What he did, what you went through, was wrong. He disrespected you, acted recklessly, and nearly jeopardized something we've spent months preparing. I reviewed the Kingswell contract this morning. You were given full authority. Legally, ethically, they can't move forward without you. I nodded slowly. That's correct. I'd like to offer you your rollback, he said. Complete control over Kingswell. Any conditions you have, we'll meet them. There was remorse in his voice, but also respect. I'll come back, I said, but everything must be in writing. Revised contract, full autonomy, and no involvement from Ryan. Absolutely, he agreed without hesitation. Done. And one more thing, I added. This can't happen again. Not to me. Not to anyone. He paused, then nodded solemnly. You have my word. When I stepped out of his office, I saw Ryan down the hall, pretending to chat with a junior executive, but his gaze snapped to me. I met his stare without blinking, walked right past him, and in that split second, I saw it. The exact moment he realized he'd lost control. By 1 p.m., we were in the boardroom. The Kingswell delegation had arrived. We had 30 minutes to prep. I reviewed the documents, double-checked every clause, and laid out the translated final terms on the table. Through the glass, I spotted Ryan pacing like a trapped animal. Mr. Cole intercepted him. I couldn't hear their words, but I saw the gesture. Mr. Cole's hand raised, silencing him. Ryan's face flushed crimson. He glanced my way again, this time with fury, but also defeat, then turned and walked away. I didn't see him again that day. At 1:30 sharp, Kingswell's CEO entered. I greeted him in Arabic. His expression softened. You remembered, he said, pleased. Respect goes a long way. The meeting was smooth, professional. We sealed the deal within 2 hours. Afterward, Mr. Cole approached. Relief was etched across his face. You saved us, he said. I owe you more than an apology. No, I replied. You owe the company leadership, someone who understands the difference between power and responsibility. He didn't argue. Later that evening, as I walked to my car, a weight began to lift. I hadn't just returned. I'd returned on my terms, with clarity, with strength. But I knew better than to think this was the end. Ryan hadn't spoken today. But people like him don't vanish. They regroup, and they strike from the shadows. The following week, Kingswell's deal made industry headlines. Breakthrough in cross-border strategy. Company secures historic deal.
through multilingual leadership. They didn't mention me by name, but everyone at the office knew who had made it happen. My inbox was flooded. Quiet congratulations. Messages from people who had once overlooked me, now applauding my composure. I read each one with cautious appreciation, but something still felt off. First, my expense reimbursements were delayed. Then forms I submitted came back without signatures. Finally, an email I never sent, containing incorrect client details, was flagged by IT. No breach. No external interference. The email came from within the company. That's when I knew. Ryan was still trying. Firing me hadn't worked. Now he was trying to dismantle my reputation, slowly, strategically, quietly. But I wasn't going to disappear. It was classic corporate sabotage. I'd become a liability. And it wasn't the first time I'd seen tactics like this. Back at my first job, fresh out of university, I worked under a director who played the same insidious game. He never confronted people directly. Instead, he'd quietly cut off access to resources, exclude you from projects, and slowly erode your reputation until leaving felt like your only option. But I wasn't 22 anymore. I wasn't going to vanish without a fight. So I documented everything. Every missed email, every error that wasn't mine, every unexplained delay. I'd learned the hard way that in environments like this, paper trails spoke louder than outrage. I even began using a private notebook, noting times, dates, and conversations, just in case. Then one afternoon, I overheard something that confirmed everything. I was walking past the conference room when Ryan's voice carried through the door, far too loud for a private conversation. "She's unstable," he was saying. "Since she came back, she's been erratic, aggressive. I don't think she's in the right state to handle high-pressure clients." I froze. "I'm just saying," he continued, "maybe it's time we start thinking about who takes over client services. She's clearly stretched too thin." A second voice chimed in. Someone I didn't recognize, probably a newer exec. "Maybe," they said. "But that Kingswell deal?" She delivered, under serious pressure. Ryan scoffed. "She got lucky. We can't run a company on luck." I stood still, chilled not with fear, but with the cold precision of his strategy. He was at it again, seeding doubt, manipulating narratives, laying groundwork to undermine me. That evening, I stayed late. The office was mostly dark, the halls silent. I sat alone in the glass-walled meeting room, staring at the city lights, wondering how many more battles I'd need to fight just to do my job. Then a voice broke the silence. "Still here?" I looked up. It was Mr. Cole. "I could ask you the same," I replied. He stepped in and placed a folder on the table. "Your revised contract. Everything we agreed on." I flipped through it. The language was solid. I gave a slow nod. "I've also launched an internal audit," he added. "Too many things have been misfiled lately." I looked up sharply. He met my gaze. "I'm not blind, Lily. I know Ryan isn't done." "Then why haven't you stopped him?" I asked. He paused before answering, his voice weary, because I needed to see how far he'd go. In that moment, he sounded more like a father than a CEO. "You're protecting the company," I said. He shook his head. "I'm trying to protect both of you, but maybe it's too late for one of you." I closed the folder. "I don't need protection. I need you to decide what kind of legacy you want to leave behind." Our eyes locked. Then he turned and walked away. I could feel something bigger coming. The office felt colder the rest of that week. Not because of the weather, but because the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations hushed as I passed. Some employees offered strained smiles. Others avoided eye contact altogether. The audit had begun, and everyone knew it. Anxiety buzzed beneath the surface. I hadn't asked Mr. Cole to start an audit, but deep down, I was relieved. The truth needed to come to light, not just for me, but for everyone who'd been walking on eggshells since Ryan took charge. Still, I understood how these things worked. In the corporate world, truth doesn't always equal justice. Sometimes it leads to quiet exits and golden parachutes. Sometimes it's buried under red tape until the damage is irreversible. That Thursday, I was called into the audit team's temporary workspace, a repurposed storage room now filled with files, screens, and a whiteboard covered in timelines and digital trails. David, the lead auditor, greeted me. "Lily, thanks for coming. We have a few questions about recent anomalies." I nodded and took a seat. He pulled up a file on his screen. "This email, for instance. It looked like it came from your account, but we traced it to a shared workstation near the break room. The login was manually entered. No phishing, no outside breach. Someone had your credentials." I crossed my arms. I reported that incident the day it happened. David nodded. "And we're glad you did, because we found more. Emails altered, spreadsheets edited, approvals removed, all originating from shared machines, all under your name." My stomach sank. "This was coordinated," I said quietly. He hesitated, then confirmed. "Yes. And we've narrowed down who had access. We also noticed suspicious activity tied to Ryan's assistant's login." I didn't move. "We're not accusing anyone," he added carefully. "But there's a pattern. It looks like an intentional effort to discredit you, and possibly others." I clenched my jaw. "What happens now?" He sighed. "Mr. Cole asked us to present everything to him. No filters, just the facts." "I'll be there," I said. "You're not required." "I'll be there anyway," I repeated. "If this is all coming out, I want to face it head on." He didn't argue. That night, I barely slept. My thoughts spiraled to all the people who had left quietly over the past year. Bright, capable colleagues in their 30s and 40s, once full of potential. I used to think it was just turnover. Now, I wasn't so sure. How many of them had been slowly pushed out by Ryan's games? The next morning, I arrived early to the executive boardroom. Mr. Cole was already there, staring out the window like a man waiting for the final card to fall. David and 2 other auditors came in next. Then Ryan walked in, 10 minutes late, phone in hand, smug as ever. Until he saw me. He stopped in the doorway. "She's not on the audit committee." Mr. Cole didn't turn around. "She's here at my request." Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "This is supposed to be confidential." "Then maybe you shouldn't have used company systems to fabricate emails," Mr. Cole replied without flinching. "I said it," my voice steady, with an edge. Ryan let out a mocking laugh. David interjected. "We've tracked several login attempts tied to your assistant's credentials, all linked to irregularities specifically targeting Lily's work. The timeline is clear." Ryan's confident expression began to waver, his polished exterior starting to crack. "This is a stretch," he snapped. "She's just bitter because she was let go." I met his gaze directly. "You didn't fire me, Ryan. You sabotaged me and nearly destroyed the most important deal this company has landed in half a decade." Mr. Cole finally turned to him. "I gave you a chance," he said quietly. "More than one. And all you've done is undermine the people trying to build something meaningful here." Ryan's composure faltered. "It's not what it looks like." "No," Mr. Cole cut in. "It's worse." Silence fell over the room like a weight. Then Mr. Cole stood. "The board will review the findings. Until then, you are suspended, effective immediately." Ryan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His eyes darted to me, not with anger, but disbelief, as if, for the first time, he realized the usual manipulation wouldn't work. He walked out without another word. I stayed. Mr. Cole exhaled slowly, his shoulders heavy. "I failed him," he said almost to himself. "As a leader. Maybe even as a father." "You can't lead someone who refuses to grow," I said softly. "But you can still lead this company. That choice is yours." He looked at me, then gave a quiet nod. For the first time in a long while, I felt the weight on my shoulders begin to lift. 2 weeks had passed since that meeting, but the ripple effects were still moving through the company. Ryan hadn't come back, and the smug grin he once wore like armor had become a subject of hushed hallway conversations. The board moved swiftly. The evidence was overwhelming. Forged emails, credential misuse, deleted files, weaponized complaints, all traced back to Ryan or those under his influence. When the final audit report was released, it wasn't just about what had been done to me. It was about how the company's integrity had been compromised. His suspension turned into a formal termination. The public explanation cited serious ethical violations. No lawsuits. No press. Just a quiet exit, swept under the rug. But the words still got out. I thought I'd feel victorious. Instead, I just felt calm. Not proud. Not bitter. Just steady. Like I had weathered a long, brutal storm and could finally breathe again. A few days later, Mr. Cole asked me into his office. He closed the door behind me. "I've made a decision," he said. He sat behind his desk, a folder in front of him, though he didn't open it right away. "I've spent a lot of time reflecting on what happened and what this company needs going forward." I stayed silent, letting him speak. "You've shown a level of leadership over the past month that some executives don't manage in a whole career. You held our biggest deal together, kept your composure through a public attack, and remained professional under pressure. That's the kind of person I want helping lead this place." He slid the folder toward me. Inside was a promotion letter. Director of Client Strategy, an executive role reporting directly to him. I looked up, surprised. "I didn't ask for this." "I know," he said. "That's why you've earned it." I paused. If I take this on, I want a say in how we move forward. I'm not interested in holding a title. I want to help rebuild this culture the right way. He smiled. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say." Later that evening, I sat alone in my temporary office while renovations were underway. I looked at the blank nameplate on the door. For years, I'd walked these halls, wondering if anyone really saw the late nights, the emergencies averted, the deals saved. I used to think staying quiet was the best way to avoid conflict, to keep things smooth. But silence had nearly cost me everything. This wasn't about a title or even vindication. It was about realizing that being competent isn't arrogance, and being composed isn't weakness. They had misjudged me, tried to erase me, but I had never let them break me, and I hadn't let bitterness take root. That, I realized, was my real victory. In the weeks that followed, I began to rebuild the department. Communication channels reopened. People who had been unfairly pushed out were brought back. I introduced an anonymous reporting system, so no one else would have to fear retaliation for speaking the truth. I also made space for the younger employees, those who had quietly witnessed everything unfold. Some of them approached me, asking how I stayed strong through it all. I told them the truth. "You don't always get to choose the battles," I said, "but you do get to decide who you become in the middle of them." As for Ryan, the last I heard, he was interviewing at smaller firms in other states. His reputation had caught up with him. Some say Mr. Cole made sure things didn't get messy publicly. Maybe one last act of mercy from a father. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. One afternoon, I walked past the glass room where the Kingswell negotiations had taken place. I paused, remembering it all. The sabotage, the pressure, the turning point. That single deal changed my career. But the real shift came when I smiled at Ryan and walked out of his office without begging. That was the moment I truly turned the page. Not because I gave up, but because I finally recognized my own value, and I vowed no one, not even the boss's son, would ever take that from me again.